morning, everybody. It's Thursday, May 2nd, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and we'll be sure to get to it during the show. Quickly here, overnight markets had July corn up 6 at 456 3/4. July soybeans were up 13.5 at 1183 3/4. And July Chicago wheat was up 7 3/4 at 607. This morning's export sales report was nothing special, 758,500 for corn for 23, kind of mid-range, really nothing that really jumps out there. Soybeans, kind of same story, 414,000. The ranges were from anywhere between 100 to 700, so pretty much right down the middle. And wheat had 20,300 moved from 23 into 24. So pretty good wheat sales, 406,900 for 24. That blew away the top end of the estimates. They were looking for 100 at the top end. And meal, 131,150 was kind of the low end. So really nothing spectacular there. USDA was out with crush yesterday, 204 million bushels, up 2.9% from a year ago. Crude oil also up 2.8% in their report. Good morning, guys. Lots going on in the outsides. Yesterday, after our markets closed, Fed keeping rates unchanged, which I don't think was much of a surprise. I think some of the forward guidance maybe eased some tensions there, just in terms of them, taking a lot of the rate hike rhetoric out of play. We did see a pretty good bounce. Stocks were up 400 or 500 there. I think we saw some of that trickle into our markets overnight. The dollar was a little weaker. So Dustin, throw it over to you for some initial thoughts here this morning, and then we'll kick it around the room.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Well, the corn market has been showing some signs of tightness here in the last couple of weeks as old new spreads have started to increase. And that's specifically May, July. Now we're in the first notice of May. But July DC even has been rising as well. We came into 20.5 today at one point. So the market is, and we're seeing pretty good basis levels in the West, parts of the West still. So the market's showing signs of tightness, and we're going right into that kind of seasonal time frame where if there's going to be a peak of uncertainty for the year, where growers are reluctant to get too sold, and buyers want to get that confidence of their purchases for the year. We often see a seasonal high May or June. This may be something, we're still kind of holding out that hope that there's some decent opportunity to get some sales in place during that time frame, and this may be the early signs of that beginning. So yeah, couple of things to hang our hat on here with the market where it is right at the close of the overnight session. If we settle there, that'd be the highest settlement, or tie the highest settlement basically since the beginning of Feb, in the high 470s for that December corn contract, and in new high settlements for that July 25 contract as well. So there's actually a carry built out there. Those that are planning on storing their corn, there may be some interesting opportunities above $5 here in the next coming days to start getting some security out into summer 2025. So anyways, it's kind of a positive, upbeat start to the day after, jumping 11 cents off of yesterday's lows. Pretty big move in a 24-hour period.
Sure. Ben, some thoughts from the East?
I like the fact that we've been able to find a little bit of flat price strength as we saw spreads move first. We're going to butt up against the 100-day moving average at 460.5 versus the July. I would not expect a lot of fireworks above there to get started, but maybe just a grind of a trade from here. I think the uncertainty component, and then factor that in with May report, which is a lot more of a meaningful report than what we saw in the April report. I think it's going to be hard to find anything that's super supportive out of that. And looking at we talked about the dominoes around the world. Certainly it's dry in Russia. I think that's a fairly large concern. Western Kansas having some issues Ultimately, I think it's going to take more from both of those places in order to continue to get wheat to move higher. Geopolitically, we did see a pretty significant attack on Odessa yesterday. As I mentioned before, I think where it really gets wonky there is should we see some of these more munitions that we've sent start tacking further on ports in Russia. There's a lot of things at play, coupled with it's always easy to print, a projected balance sheet for next year, but we ultimately have to get to those yields. Cautiously optimistic, but I think it's a tempered optimism for the most part until we see something more. Wet weather rallies can certainly lead to something like a year like 19. Historically, probably not something to get overly excited about, but we will see. We after the Fed comments yesterday as well, we talked about this before the open. Probably looking to start to lower rates sometime here in the summer, and that might have a little bit of a tailwind for us as well. So we'll see. This is that time of the year where the variables become amplified as we move into weather. Be very interested to see how we perform into the close tomorrow.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And you did reference July corn. It's interesting that 461 was that report day high when we had that big pop. So, obviously the activity around that pricing level will be interesting to see. Justin,
well, I was gonna say like that, that 460 level, we're getting pretty close to. That's the 100-day moving average, and we haven't closed above there in 10 months.
Wow.
So, you talk about, trend following funds. I mean, that's 100 days, obviously a pretty important one, whether you're a, fundamental guy or a technical guy. That's just a pretty common indicator of the trend, and we've been below it for 10 months. So I think if you start, if you can get through there, I would guess we try to sell off at first if we touch it. So we're 4 cents away from it. So, the trend has been down. So at first there'll be a lot of resistance there, I would think. So probably a good area to make some sales if you need to. But if we start actually trending above that, I think that'd be pretty positive and probably force some short covering on these big shorts. So
that would be interesting to see on Monday. We get that report and see what the funds actually were doing on this pop.
Well, you can just feel it too. I mean, yesterday they just keep whoever they is, but the try to kind of force it lower, and corn's been stubborn going down. It feels like it wants to go up. Obviously we've had some farmers selling and things that need to happen on rallies, but it feels like it wants to maybe try to make a move higher here. It's got a lot of headwinds, obviously, as we've talked about through all this, but we found demand on the breaks. We have found good sales. We found good exports. We'll see. It's a pretty pivotal area here. What do you think, Ben?
I do. I agree that I think that 460 is, that area is going to be the first time up, maybe the second time up. You're still going to have people that are willing to step in there and sell it. Should we get above that, we could see a greater kind of automated covering type of trade where it's just bid on, consistently bid. When you look at the broad scope of commodities as well, corn was really getting the boot on the throat treatment as crude continued to rally. We've seen crude come off and corn actually strengthen. And you wonder how big some of these inter-commodity spreads are, right? How big have they gotten in those trades? And Justin, you mentioned this, I think, a week ago, that there doesn't have to be a reason sometime. It just can be the unwind of a greater trade. Dustin's mentioned numerous times the really strong correlation we saw between wheat rallying and beans breaking, or beans rallying and wheat breaking. And ultimately, sometimes there's just a really bigger picture at play. I'm a little bit, one eye on that to see if we're maybe looking at a greater unwind, especially as the equity markets look vulnerable to me. So just to
to your point, you just never know. You don't know what these
You never
predictions
know.
are, and you'll see people post, so and so sold, 5,000 puts or whatever. Like, you don't know what that means. It's some part of a bigger picture. And as we talked about yesterday, the volume just keeps hitting records, even though there's not really a story in the grains right now. We're still hitting records in volume. So, if there is a story, like I said, bullish or bearish, like volatility is going to be here in our markets. And maybe we're just kind of, we're going into the growing season. Obviously, I don't think South America's had a great finish for corn. We stepped into demand. So, you can go pretty quick from, being super bearish and having, no chance of a rally to kind of friendly, or vice versa in these markets. They can change pretty quick.
Well, and you've made the point a couple of times that just the whole setup of this market the last 4 to 5 months or thereabouts has given you that powder keggy type of feel if something flipped, right? Just the way the whole dynamic's been.
Yeah, just it feels like the market kind of did its job of wearing people down. Yeah. Just kind of losing all hope. I think we went into the harvest. A lot of people in the industry, thinking yields were going to be down quite a bit. They came in better than expected. Farmer was way undersold. And then we had that big break after the first of the year, and kind of caught everybody, with their pants down, so to speak. So
yeah.
Now you've been working through that. You've been going through loan renewals. Farmers have had to, sell some physical grain to, free up some cash. So I think we've worked through a lot of that. We found a level where demand picked up, right? That's kind of the first stage of a bear market, is go to a price level where you pick up demand, right? When you have more supply than you thought, you have to go down to a level where demand increases. So I think we found those levels, where we started, selling a lot of corn and all those sorts of things. And we've stabilized, and now what, right? So we lost acres. Safrinha crops, I think, a little in question here. We had some timely rains, which helped, but I think there's several little things, and we've talked about this several times. Like, there's several little things that have kind of turned the corn market around, in my opinion, and made us where we're at kind of a fair price. It wouldn't take too much, where corn could be kind of friendly here. Yeah. I don't know what you guys think, but I think we've turned the corner on, super bearish forever. Not that we can't get back to that point if we have great yields and we're north of 180 yield. We could be talking 350 corn this fall. But where we sit today, I think we've probably gotten a little overly bearish for today's date.
Well, and we've discussed this internally a number of times, that turns in markets are particularly difficult because you get a mindset of traders that trade it the same way for an extended period of time, because it's a recipe for them to make money. And selling corn was that recipe for the better part of 5 or 6 months. And I'm not implying that this is the turn, but if the turn should occur, it could be a little bloodier than people think, just because all those people are in front of it as well. The liquidity providers, the people who are trying to help find true price of corn. I think that becomes kind of that initial catalyst. They're gonna sell it a couple times and then realize that this isn't working anymore, and then they turn on it the other way.
Yeah, and that could be the sale. I mean, a lot of times that is the sale where, they're right on the direction that, maybe we are in a multi-year bear market, and you get that quick flip where people are just like, this isn't worth, there's a lot of money at work here. We talked about this a lot. There's a lot of money in our markets that have been created in the last, 5 years. And so if you're putting your money to work trying to be short something and it just stops working, those type of traders get out and put their money to use somewhere else. They don't care, like, okay, it's not working, like we're going into treasuries or stocks or whatever it is. But that flip, that, like we're trying to talk about here, is that volatility can be super quick, and it could spike you to some level that's super important to a producer. To that trader, they're on to the next trade. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think that's just important because, you go look at any of these other markets. I think, Dustin, I was talking to you about cocoa. I think the last 3 or 4 trading sessions has been like 300% volatility.
Oh man. And
Ben's the only one here that's, well, I've been a victim, but Ben was actually in the pits when wheat was over 100% vol. And it creates a ton of opportunities. Obviously it comes with risk, but there are a ton of opportunities for people that are actually use the product. Right.
Sure.
Wow.
300% vol. That's insane. Got a couple minutes here, right? Great news in the cattle market overnight. The raw beef samples came back clean. We just opened the cattle market real strong here. So give us a few thoughts.
Well, I just think initially party horns were going off. I think this is one piece to the puzzle. They still have to test, retail samples of muscle cuts, but at least this is one piece to the pie. So I think you got the futures very, very excited here, but there's still going to be a lot of caution. There still could be some, there still could be a positive test. But I think right now the fact that it's not in the ground beef supply is at least some really good news. So initial reaction, I think overall, just, pretty obvious that we were going to be pretty strong today on that kind of news. If this break really indeed was kind of the catalyst for the break really was the story. There's still a decent chunk of headwinds here to kind of deal with beef prices kind of moving contra-seasonally. That's going to be kind of what everybody's kind of following, I think, just for a talking point right now and just for market direction in general. We really haven't seen too much cash trade, just a little bit in the north, 292, 295-ish. So we're somewhere between 2 lower to maybe 2 higher at this point. So still no real trend there just yet. But beef export sales actually kind of came in today pretty good, 22,500 metric tons. It's up 40% from the previous week and kind of making up for a pretty big lackluster start to the year in February and March. So, finally a little bit more, I think, certainty on one end, but still, like I said, not out of the woods just yet, but, it's definitely good news. So we'll see if anything else comes to fruition here about the next round of testing.
Very good. Well, we'll keep everybody in the loop here. We just opened the grain markets, stronger open here this morning across the board. July corn's up 6.5 right now, 457.5. July soybeans up 12 3/4, 1183, and July Chicago wheat's up 5.5 at 604.5. Tomorrow is Friday. We will have Fun Fact Friday with Brian. Every day that the markets are open, we're streaming live on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central. Appreciate everybody's thoughts and comments this morning, guys. It was a real good conversation. I hope everybody has a great day out there, and we look forward to talking to you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Dan.